Th3 rum, J rum, J rum. Hi, my name is Dennis Hawk, and this is The Revival. And on this podcast, we talk about people who are building communities rooted in love and compassion. And our hope in bringing these change makers together so that their ideas can grow and we can support one another in a common creative journey. Now, I've got some things that I just wrote down, that it's kind of a formal introduction, then I'll get to the stuff. But today I'm joined by Jana Holland from Byron, Australia. Jana is the author of Embodied Awakening and the founder of Sila. Did I say that right? Sila. Okay, Sila. I'm familiar with that word, but the other one I wasn't. By the way, before I go any further, what does that mean?
Silu is wholeness or heaven in Latin, and Selah is the Hebrew for pause or rest.
I knew the second one. The first one is Selu is in Hebrew?
No, Latin.
Oh, it's in
Silu
Latin.
is, a Latin word for heaven or wholeness.
Goodness. I should. I'm going to should myself. I should know both of these words considering the fact that I've taken Latin, Greek, Hebrew, and German, but I didn't know that first word. I thought maybe that had adopted someplace else. But the Sila word I'm familiar with, and it's usually in the context of music, which I find to be interesting. And okay, her work bridges neuroscience, yes, spirituality, and embodiment practice, inviting us to rediscover wisdom that lives within our body. But, and here's the but, that's not where I met you. Where I met you was that I got to share a stage with you in Black Creek, Wisconsin, many, many, many years ago. I don't want to say how many, it's at least 3 decades, I think. And then rediscovered you at Cranky Pat's Pizza in Neenah, Wisconsin, where I now live and did then as well. So we met as musicians. It was the Hollands, but back then it was you and Craig, and that was it. But that grew, and so Graciana came on board, banjo came on board, and now, wait, what's her name? Billy Lynn Camille just joined the tribe. You want to say something about that?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, isn't it? That our journeys could collide in such another lifetime, but then rejoin here in this space. How wonderful is that? That the connections and the stitches that are sewn along the way hold. That's a really beautiful thing. Yeah.
It is now, but you're just like 2 weeks. How long's it been since Billy was born?
4 weeks ago.
4 weeks ago. Okay, so you're grandma 4 weeks in. So how's the grandma business? Let's start there.
Yeah, it's really special. It's I would say that when a child comes into the world, they are new, but they are initiating everyone around them. And so just as, my son has become an uncle, my daughter's become a beautiful mother, her partner's become a beautiful father, and Craig and I have become Grandy and Yaya. It's amazing.
I love it. So between, there's several things that happened between the time I met you 30 some years ago and now. And a lot of it had to do with music, which is where I'd like to jump off because that we hold in common and, is where we met. So, the tour continued. I went my way and did what I do, and you guys went your way and did what you do. But I find it fascinating, as a touring musician myself, but I toured like a yo-yo. It went back and forth and back and forth. But you did it differently and you did it with the family.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
tell me about that. How was that? And what was that like? And where did you go? And what did you do? And what did you sing?
Well, we in 2011 decided that we would consolidate, and instead of having a home base and going out and coming back, we felt really compelled that we were called, or that there was some sort of desire and hope that was calling us forward to, give everything away, buy a bus, and begin to travel around the globe, sharing our music and our family and our way of seeing the world, which at that time was in transition from, the normal everyday life of being rooted in one place and being in and amongst your community. But we had noticed that when people got home, they just closed their garage doors, and there wasn't a lot of
Mhm. Mhm.
opportunity for community to really flourish. So
Where were
even
you living
before
at
we
that
left,
time? Where were
we
you
were we were
living?
we were in Green Bay,
Oh,
and
okay.
if you were a Packer fan, there was definitely community available. But for those of us in the arts, we were a quiet, humble community.
Mhm.
Yeah. So we just decided that we were ready to go and, yeah,
Yeah,
maybe offer this music and this depth and quality of interconnection that we had experienced as a family to the world. And so, yeah, we did that. We left, and the bus's name was Silu Haven. That's where that word Silu came from at the
okay.
beginning. And so that's translated into my work now. And yeah, we started traveling around the country and building out our bus, and it was a really humbling and beautiful experience. We just worked with what we had at the time, but then also people just naturally came and began to assist us, and we experienced all of the philosophical things we had brewing around community and interconnection and sacred reciprocity and all of these ideals. They were actually unfolding, and it was really beautiful to experience um, what it really felt like to have faith tested, to really trust that our needs
I
were going to
was
be
gonna
met.
say that selling everything and buying a tour bus and just moving out in faith was, I mean, to me, yeah, you're absolutely right. Faith, trust, those are huge words in that
Yeah.
context.
Yeah, and just really solidified that we are not meant to be self-sufficient or independent in the collective sense. Yes, we are. We have our own individual systems that work, but we work with each other as well, and we need each other to for the sake of our systems. We need each other,
Yeah.
and yeah. So we started traveling and sharing music and experiencing this reciprocity and this beautiful sense of belonging to this greater global local community that took us from 2011 all the way to moving here in Byron Bay in 2022. Yeah,
Wow.
about 12 years of nomadic life, and that took us through 26 countries and recording 4 albums and yeah, playing music everywhere. But then also, when we weren't playing music, we were engaged in learning from communities and different cultures, learning how they did community. Yeah, and serving the best way we
Mhm.
could. Craig is very good with his hands, and he's a wonderful builder. So he would chime in and do projects, and I would lead creative workshops, and the kids would just get to play and meet all of these amazing people from around the globe. And yeah, and then in 2019 we did our last tour around the world, 14 countries, and at that point, then we knew that that was going to be the last dance, which is why we called it the album "The Last Dance." And then at that point, then
By the way, that's
it
a
was
beautiful album, and I would encourage people that are listening to check out your music. You guys are on my playlist now. So
thanks.
you come up in my Spotify playlist all the time, and it's like, oh, yeah,
Thank you.
I know them. Oh,
Yeah.
it's exciting, you know.
Yeah. Yeah,
And,
it's fun
and
to
it,
see it continue to have life. It's beautiful.
yeah, it is. I can't even imagine the kind of encyclopedia of the world that your children have. You
Mm.
know, that
Yeah.
the gift that you gave them that they would never find. I'm sure they miss some of I know they miss some of the socialization that you get when you're in high school and all of that. But on the other hand, there's a gift that you guys were able to give them that I don't know, that just doesn't happen. And I was able to watch some of the videos and on YouTube, and I would again invite the audience to do the same. And the beauty of the family singing together, Craig cranking on the guitar and banjo playing, the box drum and then Graciana on the keyboards and singing her heart out, and you too on that mandolin. I love the mandolin. We used it in a song we just recorded or in process of recording right now, and I love
Yeah.
that instrument. So that must have been, I mean, that's a time in your life and in the kid's life that is unforgettable.
Unforgettable. Yeah, it's formative. It has set the foundation for really the rest of our lives, and it's available for my children to use however they choose. There's no pressure. If they want to live this way or that way, it's all good.
Hmm.
It's up to them how they want to use what was given to them, and it's the same for Craig and I. It's up to us how we want to use what was given to us because there was so much insight and wisdom, and yeah, working through the ups and downs and joys and the pain and suffering and all of the things that brought us to where we are now and continue to unfold. Like I said, the stitches are woven and
Yeah.
it's up to us to remember. And it was, yeah, really precious gift.
Now, in that process, well, first of all, your BA was in psychology and communication,
Hmm.
and and you know, that already piqued my curiosity, but then you moved on to Fuller Theological Seminary, and it's like, wait a minute, how did that get in there? And then you add on to that certification in trauma, and there was exact parallels. It's like I've got my wife and I ran a counseling agency dealing with addictions and trauma for many, many years, and I got to work with Besser Vanderkolk, who was, body keeps the score, and so we've got music, we've got theology, we've got psychology, and the new kid on the block, neuroscience. And that one, let me just go right there. Okay, but because it's not in the audience that we have right now, which is a lot of the chant community, the kirtan community, the yoga community, um, and people that are definitely interested in how the body works, how sound works, how that works with brain chemistry and neuroscience. How did you become interested in neuroscience? And explain it a little bit because not all of us understand it that well, including me.
Yeah. So it how do I explain how that curiosity peaked? It sort of found me after coming off the road and my children moving into their own adult lives and Craig and I beginning to explore what our life was going to look like. I had already been, like you mentioned, working through seminary and in that process had discovered myself really valuing a modality called spiritual direction, which has a long history mostly with men in Catholicism, but in
Mhm.
the 70s sort of kind of opened up to. And it really was a moment when I needed to have anchors. We had been all over the world. We had all of these amazing, but sometimes traumatic experiences that we either observed or happened to us. And I needed some kind of anchor. And so that master's in global leadership and spiritual direction really gave me some practical grounding tools in contemplation, postures, stillness, silence, solitude. And then once I was quiet and still, I started to notice that my body was really on fire. It was aching, and I didn't have the capacity to hold the pain that was noticing. That had been there all along, but I had been running around the world. So, it had to do what it needed to do to survive. And then now I'm in this pause. And that's when I discovered the somatic trauma therapy course. And once I was in there learning about the brain body connection, yeah, I started to want to make sense of it from a theological perspective. So, theology is just the understanding of creator, source, God,
Yeah.
however you understand it. That's actually what theology is the practice of, or not the practice, the movement towards trying to understand. And so then I discovered Sarah Lazar and Lisa Miller and Andrew Newberg, who are all neuroscientists, but are in a subcategory that is sometimes called biospirituality or neurotheology. And that just blew everything open for me. Like everything started to make sense and connect. That religion is about alignment and practice that helps you become aligned. there was
Mm.
something happening in my brain on a higher consciousness level, and it was affecting my body when I participated in certain practices that, yeah, I wanted to understand how that happened. And so these folks have done a lot of research in neuroimaging and, working with monks and nuns and people who are actively involved in these postures of stillness and silence and solitude and what happens in the brain when they are practicing. And they've discovered a neural seat for spiritual awareness
Mm.
connection, like Lisa Miller calls it a docking station.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So then that just kind of, I'm a meanderer. I'm curious. And so I'm always like, oh, what
Yeah.
does this mean? And what does this mean? And who's discovered this? And what studies are showing this and that? And how does that work with the body? And then, yeah, at the same time, I was discovering how my body actually works through the lens of the nervous system. And that also was a big moment of connecting the dots and realizing that the body is actually the first theologian.
I love
It's
that.
the vehicle for connection and safety, and it's autonomically already doing that. But when we've experienced trauma, which we all have,
Mhm.
stress, environmental filters, that informs our bodies, our nervous systems as to what is truth. And so I've always been a seeker of beauty and goodness and truth. And in the past, it has been more from looking at truth from the perspective of an idea. And this gave me access to sensing the truth in a way that felt very authentic and intuitive. Yeah. So all of this understanding and then
Yeah.
access to practices to actually engage with these parts of my body to communicate in a way that is compassionate and looking for insight. And then the body just responds with such grace. And yeah, so I don't know if that answers your question, but
Well, it does, and there's a lot of things were going on. It was like I wanted to take notes because I have a tendency to do that, and I noticed I didn't have a pen, so it was like, well, okay, I'm not going to take any notes. It looks like I'm going to have to rely on my short-term memory, which is not that great at 81. So I was doing that, but there were a lot of little footnotes along the way. But the word that kept coming to my mind as we were going through that was fire. And maybe
mm,
it's just because I'm doing, some research on that fire motif in several different religions as it crops up, including, Moses at the burning bush. It's like,
mhm,
what is that? What is spiritual part of us that gets on fire? That and
mm,
what you call the docking station, but it lights something inside of us that
yeah,
affects not just it does, it's her whole neurology, it's a whole nervous system, therefore our muscular system, therefore our skeletal system, that it,
yeah,
it travels through the entire body.
yeah,
And in that I was sensing that became a healer for you. And
mm,
in your book, you're very vulnerable at the beginning of that, telling the story. And I
mm,
in my work, in psychotherapy, we did a lot of group work, a lot of group therapy. And what I noticed over time is in my mentor is I worked with her for a number of years, and she it was like one story would spark another story, would spark another story, would spark healing, would spark healing, would spark healing. It's like the stories were so powerful in igniting whatever that is within us. I was just taken by that story of you
mm,
under the table. Can you tell that story? Do you mind telling that story?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's the story of the patchwork quilt, the crazy quilt. And it's very formative in my life. My grandmother was a precious woman, my mother's mother. She was kind and gracious and very utilitarian. So she had these two sides of the coin, but they were one coin. And yeah, she used to take me to her place of service. She worked at the Muskegon City Rescue Mission, and she was a part of a quilting bee, which back in those days, this is in the
Mhm.
70s, feels like so long ago. But yeah, she was yeah, working with these ladies in this quilting bee, and they'd gather together and they'd bring all of this cotton fabric from shirts and jeans and blankets and sheets, and they'd rip it up into different shapes and sizes and lay it all out. And they'd sit around with it all clamped down and begin stitching, hand stitching each piece of fabric onto the greater tapestry. And I used to love going with her. It was a safe place for me. And yeah, there's so many things about that memory that continue to unfold and come to life for me. But I remember when I was a very young child, I used to crawl underneath the the tapestry as they were sewing, and I would first feel the cold tile floor, my little body, and be like, oh, so cold, and I'd notice that. And then I would start crawling around and kind of looking at all of the old lady's legs. And I was noticing and sensing kind of what are these stockings they're wearing, like they're the thick stockings, and their shoes. I was noticing all their shoes, and I'm sure my little mind, my little curiosity probably tried to look up a dress or two. I don't know, but it just when I think about my little self then, it's just so precious, and then I would lay down. Eventually, I would stop moving around and wiggling, and I'd lay down in the middle of the whole tapestry, and I'd look up, and I'd notice the stitches kind of running from here to there, and there'd be strings hanging everywhere, and I would try to make sense of what they were designing. And then every once in a while, I'd run out from underneath and I'd look on top to have a glimpse of the beauty they were creating. And yeah, just this imprint of being under the quilt and trying to make sense of it, and then having the opportunity to come over the top and have a real look has really informed the way I understand life, looking for patterns and trying to understand things. And sometimes it gets really uh, I don't know, confusing because there's lots of phrase and threads and you can't make sense of it, but then you can just pause for a minute and kind of duck out from underneath and have a bird's eye view, and all of a sudden yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so that's definitely a process I move through um, as I navigate life.
Well, then some darkness came.
Yeah. So that safe place was in and amongst a life that was overshadowed by some darkness. Yes, I had in that safe place experienced what I would call the love bubble, which
Mhm.
I have an earlier memory of this love bubble, this safe, connected way of being. But yeah, the environment was cruel, and there were moments where that bubble was popped, and I had to try and make sense of the world without sight, without the ability to really see clearly. And that formed some protective strategies, some ways of being in the world that did keep me safe when I was young, but then eventually started to cause problems in relationships. And I realized that I was hurting other people as well. So, what had been done to me in terms of taking my power, I was finding myself, yeah, trying to get my power back,
Mhm.
and it wasn't healthy. And that led me down a path of trying to make sense of it. First, I moved into the intellectual space, trying to make sense of it, moving
Sure.
into theories and ideas and concepts and philosophies. And yeah, but
Well,
I would
and
say,
the picture I had was this beautiful bubble, and it's it's a space you can always go back to. That's what's beautiful about those early memories of safety, innocence. And some people have that, and some people don't have memories
yeah,
like that.
yeah,
I've got a similar one of as interesting as my grandmother, because she was always my defender. That was, it's like if I need a defender, I just have to conjure up grandma. But, having that safe space to go back to is important. And as you said, we all experience trauma at some level, and then that's what creates those maladaptive
mhm,
responses, that takes a lifetime to work through.
mm,
For me, I think I've done it over and over and over again. The cycle goes on, but of trying to prove myself, trying to prove, that
yeah,
I'm okay, trying to prove in the face of everyone else that I'm okay, those kinds of things. But I love the story and thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it. And yeah,
Yeah.
let's move on to the work that you're doing right now and how that evolution of your own growth and your own development then helped evolve exactly what you're doing today, including the experience of, the few decades of music. How has that evolved into your work today?
Yeah. So I've always been a invitational, inclusive person. That's sort of how I operate in life. And so even with music, if you came to a Holland show, you would be invited to sing, or maybe even up on stage to try your hands at playing the mandolin or the banjo for the first time in your life. And so I love walking through life and giving people opportunities to try something new. I love the way it awakens the soul, and or starts that fire that you're speaking about. And so as we transitioned off the road and into other ways of expressing ourselves creatively, and yeah, the work that I sort of began to move into was involved in spiritual direction and somatic trauma therapy, and sort of integrating the two. And they're two different fields, but because of the work of the neurotheologians that I was really ignited by, I felt like no, these aren't two separate things. They're the one and the same. They just need to be integrated, like the patchwork quilt. And so I began to try and find ways to communicate from the different angles so that you could, as a user, see how valuable both of these modalities are together. And so that sort of transpired in writing an academic paper that was published in Coolmore Journal for spiritual
No.
care practitioners and counselors and chaplains and people that work in spiritual care, for them to learn the language of the body as a way to help facilitate the space that they're holding. So learning how to get in contact and build coherence in their own systems so that as they hold space, they're more attuned and in tune. And then that sort of continued to lead into the layman space where, yeah, I've been offered opportunities to teach on this integration in all kinds of different settings.
Weren't you recently in Europe
Yeah,
doing some
yeah.
work?
So I presented
When were
this.
you there? You were in the UK, I know. What
Yeah,
what were the
that was in
dates you were?
June.
That was in
June and
June?
July. Yeah, yeah. So I was at
Oh,
the presenting at the conference for the International Study for Spirituality, and I led a workshop. And I love leading workshops in these intellectual spaces because my workshops are very much practice focused and body focused. And so it's just wonderful to see people actually pause and sort of begin to experience that connection, that conversation between head and heart and gut. And yeah, it's really
now what was the
beautiful.
conference in was that in the UK?
That was in the UK, yes,
No,
in
okay.
London. Or no, sorry, in Northampton.
We just missed each other, I
Oh, were
was
you
in
there?
London. Yeah, I was in London in late July. We
Oh,
just
you would
just
really
missed.
like this conference. Yeah, it
I
was really special.
What was the name of the conference?
It was put on by the International Study for Spirituality. So the theme was consciousness, technology, spirituality, and well-being.
Wow. I remember when, because I live in Wisconsin, I remember when the Tibetan monks came to
I
Wisconsin for those studies. It was the University of Wisconsin, wasn't it? Is where that took place.
don't remember where, but it could have been. Yeah.
The only reason I'm putting this together is because there was a friend of mine who lived in Chicago that I did my call response chant music with, that would house the Tibetan monks on their way to Madison. They would stay in Chicago and then they would move to Madison where some of the studies were done. And that's kind of off topic. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, to take us on a little squirrel run, but I have a
That's all
tendency
right.
to do that. But I love the idea of you going to, a conference. And it kind of raises a question for me. You're going to this conference where people, it's usually an intellectual conference and you're taking them into their bodies. And, and the question I had was, how do you think we got so disconnected from our bodies in Western culture? Or maybe in culture,
Mm.
period. I don't know, but because I can't speak for everybody. I know where I live. And I know that there's been a lot of disconnect, where I live and breathe in the Midwest of the USA. But how did we get so disconnected?
Well, I am definitely no expert in this, but my hunch is that pain at a certain level can no longer be tolerated.
Mm,
And so in order to survive, we have to find a way to block it out. And that sometimes means betraying the body. Um, yeah,
yeah, that
it's a
that
really
makes
simple
sense.
answer, but I wonder if there's something to the
To that just survival.
yeah,
It's a way to survive. Let's figure it out. And it takes me out of my body into my head,
yeah.
to
But
try
we're
to.
created to we're not just created to survive, we're created to thrive. And
Uh-huh.
so for me, I guess the conviction I have of sharing this work is to offer people an opportunity to taste that, to just give it a try, to see what that feels like, to be able to rest long enough to revive, and in that revival see that actually you're stronger. That 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 the surviving is strength, but it's not life, and
Uh,
we're created to really live. And so when we can take time to integrate and become what we already are, whole, remember that we're already whole, that strength and resilience then can come in a different way than it does when it's just coming from survival energy.
so there's a remembering, isn't there,
Yeah.
of who we
It's a
really
real
are.
work of remembering,
Yeah,
yeah.
of
And
who
I'm
we.
creating something right now to help with that. It's was sort of birthed over the idea has been incubating for the last 2 years, and it's just now starting to birth. It's called Sensi, and it's a sensory sanctuary, and it's using the senses as the gateway or the bridge, the portal to engage with that connection, and safety, and, build that sense of remembering. So it's
I saw
using
that
this
word in
yeah.
your website, and
Yeah,
it's like,
it's just in the very
does that
beginning of
mean?
bubbling
I
out.
don't know what that means. I've gotta find out from Jana what that
Yeah,
means.
yeah, it's
What are you're talking about an intersection between.
yeah, so it's bringing together all of the intersection of all of these things. The neuroscience, the somatics, the spirituality, and the desire to see people thrive, to remember they're beloved, they belong, and not just in a headspace way, but really to embody that.
Yeah, I just found it, in my own notes, and it was like, and I had a question mark there, and
Mhm.
you have intuitive oil ritual. What is that? I
Yeah,
gotta
so
know.
that's the first pathway. Excuse me. So there's a real beauty in ritual and ceremony, which is what religion really offers. They have, sort of a flow of practices that they move through depending on which thing you're intersecting with. And I've always been sort of on the fringes of those frameworks, and they've never quite held me the way I long to be held. And so when I began to work with the essential oils, I started to notice that a framework was being built maybe in my head, but also I believe the spirit was very much involved in building
Mhm.
that. And that framework was unraveling through a story world of the unfolding cosmos of love. And in that cosmos, then, were 7 realms
Mm,
orbiting each other, and those the realm of union, divine union, and wisdom, and expression, and love, which sat at the heart center of the whole cosmos, and embodiment, empowerment, and vitality, and belonging. And I would kind of meander through and wander through these different realms, and they had different landscapes and colors and shapes and smells. And as I began to move with my nose, I began to meet these different sentinels, I call them, essential oils. And there were 3 in each of the 7 realms. And they sort of took me on this journey of basically sharing with me what they had to offer me and encourage me with what they were defending against, to pay attention to in life, things that were popping me back over into that survival energy. And affirmations and deeper divine wisdom and ancient echoes from scriptures. It just all of a sudden became like this whole world, and I started writing it down. And as I was writing it down, it's that invitational side of me. I really want to share it with the world. I want others to be able to engage with it as a personal practice or a group practice. And yeah, it's really created to ignite intuition, to connect coherence within the body, to um, help you remember that you are beloved and that you belong. Yeah, to build trust, to soften in strength or soften like water. Yeah, it's been really precious. And so then I invited, I'm not necessarily a visual artist. I like to create visual art,
Mhm.
but it's really hard for me
So,
to get
let me
ideas
just, so
out.
I want to just put a pause here. So this is first of all your experience.
Yes, it's my
Okay.
personal experience and
Yes.
practice.
Okay. Got
Yeah.
it. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And
Now
as I
you're
was
starting to expand it because you're
now,
inviting it.
yes, I'm
Okay.
writing it, I'm creating it. The book is almost finished. And then my friend Tim Field sat down with each of my realms and my sentinels, and he engaged with them, with the writings about them, and he just started creating glyphs for each one. And so, for instance, this, I'll show you one. This is eucalyptus. I don't know if it's backwards on your screen, but
No, it's actually, and on my screen, it's fine. So, yeah.
yeah. So, eucalyptus is the sentinel of truth. It's offering truth,
Wow.
and
Wow.
that's its symbol. So you can engage with this ritual with the sense of smell, with the visual
So these will be cards.
design.
Are these cards then?
Yeah, these are the cards, and there's
Okay.
gonna be a book and, a whole framework set out for you to engage with, but it's also subjective. I'm not telling you how to do it, I'm just sharing what's
These are
happened for me.
like doors. You just like
Yeah.
you open a door and you walk in and you
Yes.
experience what you experience
And you have
within that realm.
permission to yeah, say, "Oh, that doesn't actually resonate," or "This does," or yeah, so I just really wanted it to be fluid and open for people to engage and have enough of a framework to start from for people who are curious and maybe unsure about how to do it. But then as you continue to do the practice, it'll keep unfolding, just like the
Well,
cosmos of love.
what I'm loving about this conversation is your excitement.
Yeah, I'm
You
really
know,
excited about it.
yeah, this is like, when I finish writing a song or something, it's like,
Yeah.
I want to share this. This is,
Yeah.
I had
Yeah,
this
this is
experience and
this is not just oils and oracle cards. This is a fire starter. I feel like it's like a little fire stick.
yeah.
And like look at this beautiful art. So this is the cosmos of
Oh
unfolding
my,
love that Tim
oh
created. That's an oil painting.
goodness. That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
So everything about it's just been so beautiful and humbling, and as it's unfolding I'm really looking forward to sharing it
Oh,
with the world.
this will be workshops. This will be,
Yeah.
all kinds of things. How do you think, because part of the Revival podcast and, as we started this, it would an interesting beginning from a call from a woman in Colorado, in 2024, January 2024, saying, "Dennis, if we got 1 million people chanting, do you think it would change things?" And I said, "Of course." You know, and the point wasn't just about chanting, it was about people building community out of love and compassion.
Mm.
And that's what you're doing. So, and
Yeah.
I mean, I'm already having visions of how this could, expand that idea of love, compassion, self-love, being integrated with our own
Mhm.
bodies. And now how does this, when we are self-integrated, when we've done our work, so to speak, how does that change our family? How does that change the world around us? How does it build community? How would you answer that? I just threw it in your lap, right?
That's a whole theological paper,
I
Dennis.
I know that.
Well, I guess I refer to I think one of the most profound books I ever read was on this idea, and it was by Henry Nouwen, and it's a book called The Spirituality of Living.
Mm,
And in the book, which I refer back to quite often, I feel like it was one of those moments where I was able to step outside and look on top of the quilt. He kind of gave us
uh,
this view. So now when I'm under the quilt, I'm like, "Oh, that's what's happening." But in the book, just a quick synopsis, he's speaking about Yeshua and the process that Yeshua goes through before he comes down into community and sends people on mission. And he's speaking about going to the mountain And Yeshua goes to the mountain and into the wilderness to pray and to commune and to ground and become, yeah, just kind of sit in that stillness and silence and solitude for a moment to sort of gather that inner stability.
Mhm.
And then from there, he comes down and he invites friends into his life. And then from there, they work together to develop community. And then from there, they go out on mission. But so often, we don't go to the mountain first. We just go straight out to mission.
Yeah.
And from a nervous system perspective, our nervous systems are constantly doing what's called neurocepting. So we're reading the room constantly, trying to discern whether we're safe and connected. And if we sense at all that we're not safe, or if we walk into a room in a state of dysregulation or being out of tune as an instrument, the whole room recognizes it, and then they begin to respond. So we're always doing this sort of like, "Ooh, are we all okay?" And whereas if we take the time to really become in tune, if we really
Mhm.
learn how to tune our instrument, then when we come to play with the band or we come to walk into a room, we're in alignment. We're walking in that remembering that we are loved. And if we really believed that we were loved, we would totally change the atmosphere in the room if we really believed that. If we
I
really
l
embodied it, not just in the head, but actually in the body. Yeah.
Well, I love that you came full circle and started tuning the instrument,
Yeah.
that
It's definitely been so, like, in the nervous system world, in the world of somatic practice and people talking about this, there's lots of conversation about regulation and dysregulation. Those are the
Yes.
scientific words. I struggle with those words a little bit just somatically, like, or semantically, not somatically,
Yes.
semantically, because they are kind of masculine, controlling words to me. And so I don't like them. But when I look at it through the lens of playing music and being up on a stage with people and inviting people up to play with us,
Yeah.
if I, as the band leader, don't have my instrument tuned and don't know how to tune my instrument and how to tune it in a way where I can be tuning it while I'm talking to you, you
Mhm.
probably can do that
Oh,
too, right?
yes.
Where you're talking and you're having a conversation and you're sitting
Did
there
it
tuning the
Yeah.
instrument. That's really beautiful analogy for what it looks like to be in tuned, regulated in your body, to be so connected to the nervous system and listening with compassion and grace and engaging that information. So when I think about tuning the instrument and then being able to use that instrument to lead others in song,
Mm.
that really makes more sense to my brain.
Well, and it does to mine too as a musician. And again, that's gonna bring me to another question. Do you will music or does music play a part in your evolution, continued evolution?
Yeah.
I mean,
So
because it was
Sensi is a sensory sanctuary. The first offering is through the olfactory system, through the
Mhm.
sense of smell, and sight through the visuals of the art. It also, in the ritual, invites you to express the information that you've been given and to integrate it into your being through creative process. So that could be through movement, through
Yeah.
art. And yes, each of these sentinels is going to have their own song.
Yay.
Yeah.
I'm so happy about that.
Yeah.
Back to back to the
Sound will
music
definitely
and
be a part of
yeah,
it. Yeah.
sound is like that, that's kind of where you started your healing journey, and
Yeah.
music played a big part in
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
The songs that you sing, the songs that you grew up with, even making
Yeah.
friends. I've had to go back and make friends with the songs I grew up with in the church. And, that the intention and the well-meaning of the good people that tried to
Yeah.
do what they tried to do with what they had
That's right.
and and making peace with that. But I love your journey. I love what you're creating, helping other. You're involved with another artist. Things are, man, the evolution of what you're doing is just beautiful to watch. And I've been kind of watching you from a distance because we have a lot of common friends. I looked online. It's like, oh, when Billy was born. Holly Habeck, from Milwaukee chimed in, and I'm looking at all these people, and it's like, oh, these are all my friends too. I didn't realize some of that intersection of friends in Wisconsin that,
Yeah.
that we have musically. And,
Yeah.
I hope the mandolin plays a part, as you move forward,
Yeah.
you know, and, and I'm glad that, because we knew each other from a distance, and that's been part of the beauty of doing these podcasts is actually getting to know people I may see and follow on Facebook, and I see what they're doing. It's exciting, and I want to dig in further, and this really has given me the opportunity. Now, if
Yeah.
you were to say leave something with our audience, it's like, okay, well, first of all, just a kind of final word. If somebody's out there and they're struggling right now, and they may have had trauma, they're not knowing how to deal with it, just a sentence or two that says an invitation.
You're
Don't you love
welcome.
them?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome. I
You
love
are
that.
you are welcome. You
Yeah,
are
yeah.
welcome.
And I know we'll put this information in our synopsis when we broadcast this, but can you just let people know how they can get a hold of you if
Yeah.
they want to do some work? They want to be part of this great, I mean, part of it is just the creativity. You want to be part of
Yeah.
this creative process that
Yeah.
Jana is creating?
Yeah. That'd be wonderful. Yeah, there's a number of places. Obviously, you've heard the word the Hollands, that'll bring it to me. You've heard the word Silu Selah, that'll bring it to me. You've heard the words Essensi, that'll bring it to me. And then just, yeah, Jana Holland. Like,
Yeah, Jana's there.
you can find me. I'm out there.
Well, and we'll be putting some stuff out there for you to make sure, because I love what you're doing. I love your work. And I'm going to say a couple words in closing. And first of all, thank you, for agreeing to do this and coming on today. It's been
Yeah.
wonderful to make this connection. And I hope we can stay connected, over time as we sort of have. We've woven
Yeah.
in and out. And I'm still making Native American flutes for anybody that's interested. I still do
Yeah.
that.
Beautiful.
And I'm going to close now, but as we close the conversation, I just thank you and thank those who are listening. And our goal with the revival is really connecting with people who are creating communities of love and compassion all over the world, and people are planting those seeds. And that's what I became conscious of after Rhapsody Dom 2 said that to me. If we get 1 million people chanting, would that make a difference? And I started researching. It's like, there's already 1 million people chanting. Can we do our little part in connecting
Mm.
those people and encouraging each other, as we're moving along this path of creating hope, in a pretty chaotic world right now,
Yeah.
that it's, so badly needed.
Can I
So
share one thing with you?
yes, please do.
On that note,
Yes.
I was just thinking about something that happens when I'm in sessions with people. There's a tool called resourcing.
Mm.
And resourcing is this wonderful way of getting the body to communicate and to resource itself. So, for instance, if you have a pain point in your body and you are constantly like, I have this shoulder issue right now, and I can spend some time with my breath and with this pain point, and I can find another place in my body. Say my knee feels really good. And with my breath, I can ask that energy from the knee to come up to the shoulder. And it's this amazing thing how the body travels and does this resourcing. And so sometimes I go out to if this can happen in my body, this resourcing, I reckon it can happen for the collective, which is what you're speaking when you
Yes.
speak about the people coming together to sing. When we come together as a collective, it's a giant resource. Even if physically you're not in the same place, the knee is not in the same place as the shoulder, there's an energetic exchange that happens in our whole system that happens also within our individual systems. I really believe that. So I think this idea of bringing people together to collaborate and co-create and to, be one voice has definite impact.
Thank you. That just warmed my heart. Talk about lighting the fire, or that what do you call it? That's that source in our brain. What is
The
that word?
neuro docking station
Yeah,
for
the docking
spiritual
center.
awareness.
It's like it just went poof,
Hook me
you know.
up.
So
Yeah.
again, thank you, Jana, and stay on for a minute so we can talk, but I'm going to close out now.
Yeah, thank you, Dennis. You're
My
really
way,
precious.
namaste, and thank you.